Ronald Acuna was beaned for hitting too many home runs. The National League provides more fun pennant races than the junior circuit. Talk of banning the shift refuses to go away, and as always, we give our take on the latest in the baseball world with Greenlight. You're watching The Lineup. I'm Joshua Adams. Sitting across from me is Jeff Matthews. So last week I realized I didn't get to get in a comment about you at the end like I did, because last week I would throw in, you have a nice smile. So today, Jeff, you have a wonderful laugh and it brings light to me every single day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No Austin Peay baseball or softball news for us today. However, be sure to tune in to Govs on the Go, a new Govs-only sports show produced by our good friend Christian Christensen. Govs Athletics, about Govs Athletics by Govs athletes. As far as our neck of the woods is concerned, we had so much to unpack from the 2018 Major League season, we just couldn't fit it all in one show. As such, on August 15th, Jose Urania of the Miami Marlins hit Ronald Acuna, all those NYAs, of the Atlanta Braves with a first pitch fastball. The assumption was Urania did it to end Acuna's streak of hitting leadoff home runs in 3 straight games. Jeff, a lot of different takes coming in from around the league. What did you think of it?
Well, as a Braves fan,
yeah.
It was very annoying to watch. And I didn't even see the play before. I didn't even see the ball hit him. But I did see the reaction that was caused by it. Like all the players coming out of the dugout. And then Snicker is now getting into he even got into Urania's face. And it was just it was wild to watch. And when I watched the replay, I was taken back by it. It was almost like that's what the game has become.
Has come
just,
to, yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Because, I mean, the pitch that hit Acuna was 97 miles an hour. Urania averages 95.5 miles an hour on his fastball. He was putting his heart and soul into that pitch. He wanted to hit Acuna.
And then to make it worse, you have people like, this was a big topic around the whole baseball world. Keith Hernandez made a comment during one of his broadcasts.
Yeah, he was for it, actually.
Yes, and I have the quote here. I only have the quote that most people are talking about. And to sum up what he said, you got to hit him, take him out.
Yeah, I don't exactly agree with that.
No. Not many people did.
Maybe Nolan Ryan, but he's known for punching and hitting people as often as he wants because he's Nolan Ryan, who's going to mess with him. But yeah, it's not ideal.
No, and then baseball legend Chipper Jones responded to Keith Hernandez on Twitter, I do believe was this format. And just to kind of sum up what Chipper Jones said was, he just kind of pointed out, like, if the player is good, you automatically have to hit him. He mentions Jacob deGrom, the pitcher for the Mets or whatever. And Chipper's got a point.
Yeah.
If a player's really good, you can't really do much about it. His last part of it was talking about Keith Hernandez. He said, these comments are way off base. And I agree with that 100%.
I agree as well. In our first episode, we cover the league that employs the designated hitter. This week, we move to the league that plays baseball. Jeff and I touched on the National League East last week, so right now we'll just hit the high notes. Jeff, how have your Braves been doing?
Well, the Braves have turned a lot of heads this season, a lot of heads that no one thought would be turning. The Braves were walking into the season, and a lot of people didn't expect them to beat out the Nationals, to beat out the Phillies.
And they pretty much have the division locked up. I mean, they're, 5.5, 6 games above the Phillies at this point?
5.5 above
5.5,
the Phillies,
yeah. And the Phillies, I predicted them to reach the wild card, I think.
I think you did.
To reach the wild card. So I was expecting a lot of them. And honestly, they've done really well. Aaron Nola is an amazing pitcher. Jake Arrieta is solid, as always, but it just seems that they can't keep up with the Braves. The Nationals, I mean, they were really highly touted heading into the season, but it just didn't pan out for them. And
I think one of the biggest things is no one expected the young guys of the Braves to come out and play the way they did. The young guys, Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, even he's not young, but Freddie Freeman, like all these players like came together and decided to play really well. And I think it's really shaken up that whole entire division. The Marlins. The
Marlins are there.
Yeah.
And the Mets, they're just deal with injuries, and they have pitching, and they pretty much have nothing else.
Yeah, you talked about that before.
Moving on to the Midwest now, the National League Central has provided one of the more interesting division races in baseball this year, in my opinion. While the Cubs have led for most of the year, the Brewers and the Cardinals have been on their heels the entire time. So the Cubs, as I said, have pretty much led the division the entire time. The Pirates actually led the division for a bit, but that didn't exactly pan out.
They are now 11 and a half games behind.
Yeah, 11 and a half games out. They're not going to make the wild card. They're not going to make the division. I mean, the Cubs aren't going to lose 11 straight, and the Pirates aren't going to win 11 straight. That's not going to happen.
Now, the Brewers they've played fairly well.
They've been really exciting this year.
They have been. I remember watching a couple of their series and thinking about, like, I didn't expect them to be that good. And then they came out and they were putting some...
Yeah, and honestly, they wouldn't be this good if it weren't for their offseason acquisitions. Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain have been amazing for them this year. Lorenzo Cain, I think, might lead the league in B-WAR. And that's, as a center fielder that, is pretty much heading into the season, people thought he was a contact hitter and a good fielder, but not that much pop. But he has a good amount of pop in his bat as well, and he's kind of battled for the league lead in batting average. He's always going to have a good batting average. Christian Yelich honestly is an MVP candidate this year as well. I mean, he's hit for 2 cycles. Both of them were against the Reds, so it counts as 2/3 of a cycle, somewhere around there. The Cubs have it's been the Javier Baez show, and he's batting for average. Like he's finally reached that point where he can lay off that outside slider. He still has the massive swing that can give you what I think he hit like a 490 something foot home run out of Wrigley Field to dead center. I mean, that just doesn't happen. But he is a heartbreak in a player. Every single time he comes up to bat, you are expecting him to whiff on horribly on one pitch, and then when he finally makes contact, I mean, he is baseball essentially. You know they're going to fail 7 out of 10 times and be the best if they're the best player. But the 3 times that he succeeds, you're like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. And it is. He's one of the most fun players in baseball. I mean, he was the most popular player at the Little League World Series because they give their favorite players, and he was the most picked player by the Little League World Series.
That's interesting.
As far as the Reds are concerned, they're there. Honestly, they had about a month stretch where they were one of the hottest teams in baseball, but they've come back down. Honestly, if they have some decent players, they honestly do. But their pitching just isn't there. I mean,
with 24 and a half games behind the Cubs, they have a chance. I think. No, I'm just kidding. But my point is, we talked about tanking before, and I think we talked about how the Reds have done that. And so I think going into next season, I'm expecting to see the Reds do a little bit. I'm going to say I'll put them at 4th. I think they'll go up 1 spot.
You think the Pirates will be last in the division? So. Honestly, I could see it. They show flashes of being a good team.
Yep.
Finally, we come to the National League West, which, in my opinion, has been the most hard-fought division in baseball this year. Not necessarily the most interesting, because I'm biased on that because it's the Cubs. But coming into this season, the Dodgers were expected to hit the ground running and never look back. But injuries and underperformances have kept the division close, as the Rockies, Dodgers, and Diamondbacks have all had their time at the top of the division. The Diamondbacks are fading down the stretch. They've lost, I think it was like 13 of their last 15.
Yeah.
Some really bad stretch like that. But the Rockies, I mean, they're a game and a half out, I believe, maybe 2.5.
Yep.
Okay, but they've been great this year. I mean, Trevor Story, he's batted. Have it right here. He batted 239 last year. This year he's batting 288, and he still has all that pop in his bat. I mean, I don't know if you saw it or not, but he hit a home run and fell over. It was like 100-something mile an hour off the bat, and he fell over and had to support himself, get back up, and then run around the bases. So that's some pop right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their pitching staff has been solid. Adam Ottavino, I don't know if you've seen him or not. He has one of the most ridiculous sliders in the game today. Unbelievable. I think he's been worth about 3 WAR this year as a reliever, and I don't even think he's their closer. He might be. They signed Wade Davis, I believe, to be their closer, but he's disappointed this year. But as far as the rotation goes, Kyle Freeland, it's only his 2nd year in the league, He's a finesse lefty. He just missed out on a no-hitter last year. He has 2.95 ERA and just under 200 strikeouts. But that ERA pitching at Coors, that is impressive.
Yes. Especially at Coors Field.
Yeah, I mean, because if batters are penalized for playing at Coors, you got to give the pitchers extra credit for having a sub-3 ERA at Coors.
Yes.
That's just, I mean, it's unheard of.
So, thinking back early in the season when the Rockies were playing the Braves, I remember watching that series, and I remember watching the Rockies play, and I just remember, like, they beat the Atlanta Braves. I do believe they won that series. I think it was 2-3. I think that's what it was. But I remember watching that, and I was not mad that the Rockies won because they just played well. They were overall playing well. And so they're only 2.5 games behind. I would honestly love to see the Rockies come up and take out the Dodgers from that first place slot.
Yeah, to an extent, the Dodgers are the Yankees of the National League.
True.
It's kind of like the National League has two Yankees: the Cardinals as far as the winning goes, and the Dodgers as far as the prestige and the money goes.
Yep.
But Kershaw's been great this year when he's played. He's dealt with injuries, but he's dealt with injuries his entire career, so you get what you get with that. I think at one point the entire Dodgers rotation was on the disabled list, so that's one of the reasons that they didn't maybe do as well as they thought they would. Because I mean, it was coming into the season, it seemed like it was a surefire 95-win team, but as we said, they're 2.5 games out, so. It's going to be a fun division to watch.
Absolutely.
On the other side of the break, more and more players and fans are becoming fans of limiting defensive shifts. Our thoughts coming up. You're watching The Lineup. He is Jeffrey Matthews. I am Joshua Adams. There it is. It is a known fact to baseball fans that left-handed hitters pull the ball more than right-handed hitters. Because of this trend, in the early 2010s, teams started moving infielders to the right side of the field. The idea was if players simply weren't hitting the ball the opposite way, why not move the fielders to where the ball is actually being hit? Today, the shift has affected left-handed hitters' production to such a degree that Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred has asked a special committee to discuss whether or not the shift should be limited or outright banned. Jeff, we touched on this last week. What are your thoughts on the possibility of limiting or even outright banning the shift?
Well, I know your best friend, Robert Manfred, is...
Yes. We are very close.
Very close. I think I said this last week, I do believe, is when we talked about this. And one of my favorite players, because I'm a Braves fan, I'm going to bring up the Braves again, is Freddie Freeman. And he is a left-handed hitter.
And he pulls the ball.
And every team has shifted on him, and every team, he has been, I don't want to say he's been struggling. I don't know what his batting percentage is at right now, but I will say the games that I've been able to watch in full, and every time I've seen that shift, and any time that he's gotten out, and it's worked, and it's been effective. And I think if something works, and I think that's a strategy. That's not. I don't think that's cheating. I don't think that's. It's not like you're adding another fielder onto the field, right? So I feel like there's just a lot of hoopla over nothing.
Yeah, it's Matt Carpenter, I believe, said that he was against allowing the shift. There was a great piece by Jerry Krasnick over at ESPN in July. He talked to 3 different types of left-handed hitters: Daniel Murphy, he talked to Kyle Seager, and Matt Carpenter as well. They were all talking about the approach that comes with hitting against the shift. Daniel Murphy said he goes for doubles every at bat. If he bunts to get on base against the shift, as we've all seen players do, that just gets him a single. If you are shifting against a player, they're most likely a power hitter. They're most likely trying to hit doubles and home runs. So if you get them to hit a single, just a little dink bunt hit down the third base line, you've done your job. You've done what the shift is for. You've kept them from doing what they're good at, because they're not going to, they're not going to steal second and third on you if you're Anthony Rizzo or Freddie Freeman.
Right.
So he's said that it does, him being Daniel Murphy, has said that it's asking too much of your teammates. It's in the article he said it's about 3 singles for a run, and if you get that single, you're asking 2 of your teammates to get hits. But if you get a double, you're asking only 1 teammate to knock you in, and that's a lot better percentage being on second base than being on first base. And this is what the shift is there to prevent. It's to prevent the power hitters from hitting it where they've been hitting it. So they've put, whether it's the shortstop, the second baseman, or third baseman, each team has their own way of going about that. They put him where they're going to where they're going to hit the ball. So I don't see anything wrong with that.
I don't either. And I think another thing, I think you touched on it. It's also very psychological. It is, the batter steps into the box, and he knows he's been pulling it. When you step into that box, you know exactly where you want to put it. And if 90% of the time your answer is that way, it's psychological when you see more people on that side, and now you're like, well, I have nowhere to hit this ball. And then now you can't hit it the other way. And so it's very psychological, and it's interesting to see because these players, sometimes they can't place that ball anywhere else besides that side of the field.
Yes, people underestimate how difficult it is to hit a baseball. Yeah. I mean, that is coming in 95 with movement, and then you're expecting 95 with movement, and they drop a slider in, and you just whiff right over it. One of the things that Daniel Murphy was saying in that Jerry Krasnick piece at ESPN was that if you let the shift change your approach, then the shift has already won. The shift has already done its job, because your job as Daniel Murphy or Matt Carpenter or Kyle Seager, you're a power hitter. Your job is to hit those home runs. It's to hit those doubles. The shift started in about 60 years ago with Ted Williams in the World Series. I can't remember the specific year or what team it was against. I believe they put all 4 infielders on the right side, and Ted Williams still pulled the ball, and he still had a Ted Williams World Series. He said that's his game, and that's pretty much what it is. Players have learned to hit the ball over the shift. I think Anthony Rizzo is hitting 260 something against the shift this year, so the shift has limited his production. He's batting 280 something on the year, I believe. It has limited his production, but he's still pretty much the player that he is with the shift. Players will find a way, and I don't think it's fair to limit the defense from preventing players from getting hits. That's their job. That's their one job, is to prevent hits. And if you prevent them from standing in one place or the other, it's unfairly favoring the hitter, if you can call it that.
Right.
Because the hitter already has to deal with pitching.
Right. I think for me, when we're talking about this, my question is, how do you draw that line of you can only go this far? Second baseman can only go this far. First baseman can only go this far, right? And I think I heard at one point, like, the shortstop can't go past second base. Like, that's like you have like a line in the middle of the diamond from second base to home plate, and shortstop can't cross that line, and second baseman can't cross that line. And I just disagree with putting those restrictions on like that. I think it's frustrating to see, because like I said, it's a strategy, and I think if you can utilize it very well to help your team, I just don't think it should be banned. I think that's kind of where it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, they're professional hitters. It's their job to get around whatever the other professional baseball players are doing. Right. Scott Boras, if you know who Scott Boras is, you know who he is. He has labeled the shift discriminatory. It says right and left-handed hitters should be treated equally, and they are. Chris Bryant is a right-handed hitter, and he pulls the ball on the ground, I think it's 70-something% of the time.
I actually have Chris Bryant pulled up right here, and this is off of Major League Baseball's website. But it just says, what it talks about is how Chris Bryant is one of the most shifted on right-handed hitters. The stat they have is 54.8% of the time he's been shifted on. And that's been crazy. Like, that's crazy to think about, because there's not a whole lot of right-hand hitters that are being shifted on that much, right? And so I do disagree with that. I think they are being treated pretty fairly.
Yeah. If the right-handed hitters are pulling the ball as much as the left-handed hitters are, they will shift. It's just that right-handed hitters are more likely to spray the ball all over the field. I mean, even in Little League, when a left-handed hitter goes up, you turn to the outfield and go lefty, and you all take 2 steps to the left. That's what you do. That's just a known fact. For whatever reason, left-handed hitters pull the ball more than right-handed hitters. And Ben Zobrist, because I'm a Cubs fan, I go to what I know. Ben Zobrist pulls the ball when he's a lefty. He's a switch hitter, and he pulls the ball when he's a righty. That's what he does. And if you don't shift on that, you are keeping yourself from preventing the runs. Right. It's unfair to the defense if you limit that.
Absolutely.
Freddie Freeman, you said that he's he gets out when he bats against the shift. He actually has a better batting average against the shift this year than he does on the year.
Does he really?
He bats .360 against the shift, and he's .307 on the year.
See, yeah, that's Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, as far as Chris Bryant goes, I was trying to remember what I said. And,
right.
I mean, what I was going to say. He pulls the ball on the ground, but when he hits the ball in the air, it can go pretty much anywhere. Mm-hmm. That's why in the outfield he's shifted to center or to right, and I think that's a beautiful. I don't know if you know about the website Baseball Savant. Mm-hmm. It's from Major League Baseball. It has all the StatCast data. You can look at where each fielder is positioned for the last 200, for the last 300, for the last 50 at bats for this player, and you can look at that for those stats for 2017. I think it goes back to 2014. I think that's the year that StatCast was introduced. And I was looking at that last night, preparing for this talk about the shift, and it's a baseball nerd's dream. I mean, because you get to see where every single ball has been hit. You can look at launch angle. You can look at all that stuff, all that to come around to. Teams shift Chris Bryant straight up or to opposite field in the outfield, because that's what he does when he goes out, because he'll hit the ball on the ground to the left side, and it's weird. It's easier to make peace with seeing 4 fielders on the right side of the field, but seeing 3 fielders and only on the left side of the field and only a first baseman, that is strange, because as a right-handed hitter, when I was in high school, that was kind of my spot, was hitting it right towards the second baseman, and you're opening that up right there for all those right-handed hitters. You're opening that up. So there are detractors as well, because even if they do lay down the bunt, and as we said, the shift wins, they still got a hit. They still have a base runner. It's not like that point is moot. It's not like they're standing there or as Dusty Baker said, they're clogging the bases. They still are able to come around and score. So you weigh the options. I mean, Joe Madden of the Cubs, when he was on the Rays, he was one of the first proponents of the modern shift. And now on the Cubs, they now that he's managing the Cubs, they shift the least in the league, or one of the least in the league. They were pushing it, and then they realized maybe it's not that helpful, and maybe the positions of where they've put the players for 200 years mm-hmm. have been there because that's where they hit the ball. As we discussed last week, the shortstop used to be a rover position, and that's why it's 6 and not 5 when you go around the infield. Yep. It used to go wherever the ball was hit. I mean, wherever they thought the ball would be hit, and the third baseman was just in between second base and third base. So limiting that is just it. The people that are complaining about that is, you're a professional hitter. That's pretty much what I'm saying. What I think is, you're a professional hitter. You have a job to do. You can do it, as we've said. If it was in the NBA and they discovered some new defense that was preventing everyone from scoring, they wouldn't necessarily ban it, unless we mentioned LeBron James, but that doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. It's definitely interesting, and I'm interested to see where it's going to go from here. Mm-hmm. I really do believe nothing's going to come of it. I think it's just going to be kind of one of those weird conversations, and then that's it. Yeah,
if they actually ban the shift, I will be very, very surprised. Coming up, green light and overreacting to the season at hand. Welcome back to the lineup. We are now at the part of the show we call green light. For those not aware, when a batter is given the green light in baseball, it means he has permission to swing at whatever pitch he wants. In this case, we have given ourselves the green light to overreact to any and every aspect of the baseball world.
This season, Christian Yelich is batting .481 with 7 home runs against the Reds, including 2 separate times hitting for the cycle. If Yelich wins MVP, the Reds pitching staff should request a shout-out for the assist.
Mets and Red Sox fans alike chanted "Yankees suck" on Sunday. With the way it brings people together, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
The New York Mets believe they can compete next season, given their few quality bats, complete refusal to use analytics, and how competitive the NL East is. This should be completely doable. The only thing standing in their way is actually putting together a good ball club.
If the Tampa Bay Rays win a ball game and there's no one there to see it, does it still statistically count?
Earlier this year, Diamondbacks relief pitcher Archie Bradley admitted to soiling himself during a game and pitching through it. Similarly, on Monday, Javier Baez destroyed Chase Field's bathroom before launching a home run. It wasn't off Bradley, but could you imagine if it was?
The Atlanta Braves gave people finding shelter from Hurricane Florence free tickets to their series this past weekend against the Nationals. Good on the Braves, distracting those displaced by the natural disaster of Florence by showcasing the man-made disaster that is the Washington Nationals franchise.
The Pittsburgh Pirates made a push for the playoffs earlier this season by trading for Chris Archer. It's a shame no one told them Chris Archer is just an average pitcher.
Hand, foot, and mouth disease has made its way around the baseball world this year, affecting impact players such as Noah Syndergaard. Because who else would that happen to but the Mets? Mets training staff, 2019 Comeback Player of the Year.
Earlier this year, Tampa Bay Rays president Brian Auld announced the team is looking to build a new $800 million stadium. When asked how the team would pay such a steep price, he laughed and said, "Don't worry about it."
Yasiel Puig hit 5 home runs in 2 games. It would have been less impressive if he had hit 4 home runs.
Wait, how is that an overreaction?
Because I roasted him, man. You know, got him good.
But that's not. Cubs catcher Wilson Contreras received backlash after taking over 8 seconds to reach first base on what turned out to be a double. Contreras apologized to the pitcher, the media, and his teammates, saying he would never do it again, just like he said last time he did something like this 2 years ago.
Yasiel Puig's house was broken into this week for the 4th time in the last 2 years. Much like bats, Puig is known to prefer to lick his house's locks rather than use them.
The Nashville Sounds elected not to re-up with the Oakland Athletics instead of signing a 4-year contract with the Texas Rangers. An unnamed Rangers executive stated they needed to get their foreign-born players used to Southern accents before hitting the major leagues.
So, have you been watching the MVP races in both leagues so far this year?
Not as much as I need to be, but it is interesting because I've heard some things going on.
Mookie Betts has been spectacular this year. Honest to goodness, he is an amazing ball player plus defender in the outfield. Mike Trout will. Obviously, we're talking about the American League. Right. Mike Trout will always be an MVP candidate if he is on the field at any point during the year. I think the lowest place he's ever come was 3rd. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right. Mike Trout is having a Mike Trout year, so he will always be a front runner for that. And if you've ever watched a game with Mike Trout, it is somewhat amazing to watch how uninteresting he is, and I don't intend that as a knock in any way. He just gets in the box, launches it 450 feet, runs around the bases. He has one of the quietest, quickest swings in baseball. He just gets to it and he just flicks the wrist, and you're like, oh dang, that went into the fountains at Kauffman Stadium, like 490 something feet away. And in the National League, you have Paul Goldschmidt, who will always be a great player. I think he's 30 this year, and he's been an MVP candidate for the past 5 years or so. Freddie Freeman was an MVP candidate earlier this year, but he's kind of fallen off
Right.
a little. Javier Baez is a front runner, partially because he's on a big name team like the Cubs. Christian Yelich, if he were on the Cubs, he would probably be getting more attention than he is. We've reached the end of the lineup. Remember, you can catch our show anytime at APSU-TV, at the APSU-TV YouTube channel. Make sure to check that out if you want more of Jeff's just infectious laugh. For Jeff Matthews and the entire production crew, I am Joshua Adams. Thank you for watching.